Hey guys, Goon Cartoon here with another Photoshop tutorial for beginners. Today I wanted to show you how I like to use the gradient tool to color in my artwork. The gradient tool is super easy to use and also gives you a really cool different effect when coloring your artwork than say the paint bucket or the paintbrush tool. So let me show you how I like to use it with a drawing like this and take you through my process. Here we go. So the first thing I want to do is duplicate my layer. So I go over here to my background layer and I press Command or Ctrl J and it will make a copy. Then on the new copy that I just made, that layer, I want to make sure I have it selected and I'm going to delete the background. So I'm going to use my magic wand tool to do that. I go ahead and press W on the keyboard and I click on the background and it should select everything around your artwork. Now this particular drawing has some spaces that are hiding from me, such as between their arms like this. So I want to hold the shift key down and click here and in areas where there's some background space hiding. And if it's a little bit too difficult to grab, I'm going to zoom in with my magnifying glass tool by pressing Z on the keyboard. Then I press W again, hold down Shift, and I grab those extra areas of the background. And I want to make sure that I have everything selected and I'm not missing anything. I think right here behind this guy's knee is the last spot. I'm going to hit Command or Control 0 to back up. And I've got one more piece hiding here and here. And I think that's everything. So I'm going to press delete. And even though it doesn't look like I did anything, that's because I have my background layer still turned on. So I'm going to go ahead and click the eyeball to turn that off. And now you can see that on my top layer, I've deleted all of the background, except of course for right here. I'm going to deselect by pressing Command or Control D on the keyboard. And now I'm ready to work. So the first thing I want to do is I want to use my magic wand tool to select parts of these guys so I can color in bits and pieces one at a time. And the magic wand tool makes that super easy. So once again, you press W on your keyboard and you select the area that you want to color in first. So I'm going to first start with this guy's hair. And I'm going to hold Shift down to select the hair on the side of his head. So I have all of his hair selected. Now I'm going to go over here to my gradient tool. I can press G on the keyboard or I can click there. Get this menu I don't want. And once you have that selected, you have a gradient menu up here. I'm going to hit this drop down. And as you can see, we have all these different preset gradients. We've got blues, purples, pinks, reds, oranges, greens, etc. And these presets are actually really good, and these are the ones that I'm just going to go ahead and use, because when it comes to gradients, I don't like to use too many colors, personally. It's just my preference. So I want to stick between two colors, maybe three, when I go through and color each of these guys. So I also want to alternate between cool colors and warm colors. Each guy's going to have a cool color and a warm color either in his hair or on his body. So for this guy, I think we can go ahead and start at the top here with blues and select a nice blue gradient and color in his hair with that. Let's see, let's grab this one and see how it looks. If we go ahead and just click off onto the artboard, it will get rid of this menu. And now we just simply click and drag, and this is telling Photoshop where to extend the gradient to. So it's going to fill his entire head of hair with the gradient. If I want to reverse this color, which I do, I want to put the lighter blue on top. I start at the bottom and I click and I drag up and I go all the way up to the top of his head to make sure I'm filling all of the hair, and I release, I let go, and there you have it. It's pretty easy. I'm going to deselect once again by pressing Command or Control D, and it looks like I've got all of his hair filled with a nice blue gradient. So now I'm just going to move over to coloring in his body by pressing W to get the magic wand tool again. And I want to make sure that I grab everything. So as you can see, I'm missing some pieces up here in his forehead, and obviously I don't have the lower half of his body selected. So I'm going to hold Shift on the keyboard, and I'm going to click and select those extra pieces that we're missing. These ones are going to be a little bit more difficult to grab, so I'm going to zoom in by pressing Z to grab my magnifying glass, zoom in, Press W again, hold down Shift, and click on these spaces that we're trying to hide from me, and make sure I'm only grabbing the white. I definitely don't want to grab the black outlines, or else I'd be coloring in those with the gradient as well. I'm going to back up by pressing Command 0 and press G for my gradient tool, and go back to my menu, and I want to select a warm color palette for this guy, and I'm going to try something in this pink palette. Let's try this one right here. I'm going to click off of that so I can hide it and get rid of it. And I'm going to start at the top. I can even go up here in his hair if I wanted to, and click and drag down, or I can go past below his feet if I wanted to, and it will make sure that I fill his entire body with that gradient. I'm going to undo that to show you. If I were to only click here and drag here, it still fills the entire body because that's what I have selected, but it will determine where you drag where the gradient starts and stops. So as you can see here, it goes from pink to orange right about here at the top of his wrist. But if I click up here and go all the way down to his feet, it ensures that I get a nice smooth gradient throughout his entire body. Once again, I want to put the lighter color on the top and the darker color on the bottom. So I'm going to click at the bottom and drag up to the top. And now I've got the darker pink below and the lighter pink up above. Another cool thing that you might find useful is getting rid of these moving lines, these marching ants as some people call them. You just simply press Command+H for hide, and it hides them. Now this piece is still selected. I can't color in anything else on the artboard, but I've gotten rid of them so they're not in my way as I'm looking at my artwork. You just have to remember that you're still selected, that this guy is still selected if you wanted to move on to this next one, this next character. You'd have to deselect. So I'm going to go ahead and do that by pressing Command D, deselect, and now I can use my magic wand tool again and select this guy's hair. He's got one little piece down here that's not selected, it's not connected to the rest of his hair, so I'm going to zoom in and grab that with the magic wand, press Shift, click, and now I have all of his hair selected. Press G, get my gradient menu back, and I'm going to give this guy a warm color palette for his hair, and I think I'm going to do something in this orange palette. Perhaps this one right here, sort of yellow and orange sunset. I'm going to click and drag up and let go. I want the orange on the bottom and the yellow on top, so I'm going to reverse that by clicking at the top and dragging to the bottom. And I let go. And there you have it. Deselect, and then get your wand tool back and grab this guy's body. And that's all it is. It's really simple. Like I said, this is a super simple, easy tool to use. You just got to make sure that you're grabbing everything with your magic wand tool so you don't leave anything behind, like these fingers, for example. I had to grab a couple of those on their own. But the tool itself is very easy, very simple, and it creates a really cool effect when coloring your artwork that's different than just a flat color with a paint bucket or something like that. Personally, a lot of my artwork, my style is very cartoony. I like just a solid color. Sometimes I go in and I shade some of my artwork as well. But this was kind of a fun, cool alternative to coloring my art that makes it stand out from other pieces that I have or that I've made or done or colored. So I'm going to use a purple for him and see what that looks like. It's kind of a blue purple, but I like it. So I'm going to deselect that, and I'm going to move over to this guy and select his hair. Press G, get my tool back, and I'm going to use something in the green palette. Now, let's say you have your own ideas of what kind of colors you want to use. Maybe you want to go beyond the 2 colors that I'm using and you want to do 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or more, or whatever. That's really simple to do as well. What you want to do is click on the actual gradient colors, and it's going to bring up this gradient editor. And on this slider here, this is showing you the colors that it is blending in the current selection that I have for this guy's hair. If I simply tap here where I have this little hand icon, and you just move your mouse over there, your cursor, and you tap there, you can bring up another color. And if you click in this box, it will bring up the color that it is right here. You click here and it will bring up your color picker. And now I can add a third color if I want. And you can keep going and adding as many colors as you want. So in our color picker, we can move around and we can grab whatever we want. I'll grab a yellow, so we'll go from like this light green to a blue, to a yellow to a blue. I hit OK. As you can see here, it's blending between these three colors. You can adjust this further by clicking on these little diamonds and dragging them, and that's adjusting how far the yellow goes before it starts to blend into the blue. If you'd like to get rid of a color because you don't like it, you simply click and drag away and it will get rid of it. And if you want it back, you click here and there it is again. And you can continue clicking and adding as many colors as you want, and you can make a whole rainbow gradient if you wanted to. So it's pretty simple and easy. Once again, you've got some more presets up here that you can use and customize as well. You can even give your gradients a name here. You can call it Goon Cartoons Rainbow Gradient or something, whatever you wanted to do. I'm going to keep it simple and stick with my 2 color gradients for this particular piece and move on. So let's go ahead and repeat the process. Deselect, grab the wand, select all the guy's body parts that are there. I'm missing a finger over here, so I'm going to hold shift and click that. And go back to my gradient tool in my menu. Hit the drop down, not the color. The color will bring up the menu, but I want to hit the drop down arrow and get some more colors to use. And let's try one of these pink iridescent palettes down here. These are really cool. Very subtle, really nice. As much as I like that one, I'm going to change it. Let's try and explore with another one. Let's try this yellow one. Perfect, I like that. Okay, so we're just about done. I've finished using all of the gradients that I want to use on this. I'm going to color their eyes and the insides of their mouths and their lips with just regular flat colors using the paint bucket tool. So the paint bucket tool is hiding underneath your gradient tool, so if I click and hold down, I can grab my paint bucket tool. It has the same keyboard shortcut as G, but I can't access it as long as the gradient tool is already accessed. So if I go and grab that, now I've got my paint bucket tool selected and I can go ahead and color in these smaller areas. I'm just going to go ahead and use just kind of a regular red or pink for the mouth on some of these guys, and then we'll mess around with the eyes and do some oranges, greens, or blues or something. For this guy's mouth, I'm going to go ahead and use my eyedropper tool by pressing I on the keyboard, and this is going to select a color, whatever color I tap on. So I want to grab something from the color that he already has in his body. I want it to contrast against the yellow, so I'm going to go down further down here to like his legs and grab this sort of pink color, and then I'm going to press G to bring up my paint bucket tool and fill in his lips like that. And I'm done coloring my characters. Now all I need to do is give them a background and maybe a little shadow, a drop shadow, and I'll call it a day on this one. So I'm going to make a new layer by going over here and pressing this plus button. Now it's on top, but I want it to be behind the character, so I need to drag this layer down below that layer that has the characters on it. And I'm going to go back to my gradient tool by pressing down here, selecting the gradient tool, and finding a nice gradient here. And this one I want a lot of colors in. I don't want just 2 colors. So I'm going to go down to this iridescent palette and I'm going to select this rainbow gradient. And I'm going to click from the top and drag to the bottom. And there we go. I like that. It provides a decent amount of contrast between the characters and the background. It's a little muddy, but that doesn't bother me too much on this one. I can always go back and find a new palette or select something else, or I could maybe reverse the colors here and see if that helps. But I think what they really need is some sort of drop shadow, so they're not just floating in space here. So I'm going to select, create another layer by pressing my plus button. And that one's right where I want it to be, between the goons and the background. And I'm going to grab a nice scratchy, crusty texture brush over here that I have. I've got these cool grain shader brushes, and I'm going to grab one of these. I'm going to select a nice dark gray color and just lightly come in here and give them a nice scratchy, gravelly looking drop shadow. It doesn't have to be too precise or exact. It will still give me the effect that I'm looking for, and it will ground these guys a little bit and keep them from looking like they're just floating in the air. You need to do a couple different passes to darken it up. I don't want to darken all of it too evenly. I want it to be a little bit light and dark in spaces. So right under their feet, I'm going to darken it a little bit. And just for a little more texture, I'm going to grab a brush that's a wet brush that's kind of a splatter brush and give it a little more texture. Don't want to go too crazy with it. And I like that effect. I think it helps. I think now they look like they're actually walking or jogging across the floor here or the ground, and not just floating in the middle of the air. And that's all there is to it. As you can see, it's really easy to use gradients. I love the effect that they give. Like I said, I kind of like to keep it simple. My artwork is very cartoony, and so I choose to use a lot of flat colors, and I usually don't give these guys too much more detail in coloring. I might come in and give them some shadows and some shade and some textures using some of these brushes, and that can be really fun sometimes. But for the most part, I just like to use flat colors. But the gradient gives it a little bit more pop and bounce, and a little more definition, a little something different than just one solid color per guy. I hope you guys found this tutorial fun. I hope you found it useful, and I hope it helped you get creative with your own artwork and coloring it and using it and making your stuff look even better and cooler than it already is. So have fun with it. Let me know what you think in the comments, and like and subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next one.